where something specific is being referred to, but it's not named outright. So that's mubham. And also word order. Two or more things may be mentioned in a given passage, and one of them will be, of course, you have to name one of them before the other. So what are the patterns that guide that? And what are the considerations? Also oaths, aqsam, and what is sworn by and what is being sworn to emphasize. And if we have time, we'll talk about some of the ways that the Quran develops arguments. So the first topic, inshallah, is al-Mubhamaat. And so as I said, these are talking about something specific without naming the person, usually the person, sometimes the place, maybe also a group of people. And there are a number of reasons for not doing so. The first is that the identity of that party is explained somewhere else. So, for instance, in Surah Al-Fatiha, صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ, that's explained in Surah An-Nisa. وَمَنْ يُطِعَ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ. Whoever obeys Allah and the Messenger, they are with those to whom Allah has shown favor, of the prophets and the saints and the martyrs and the righteous. That's verse 69 from Surah An-Nisa. Sometimes the party being referred to is so well known that there is no need to clarify. So, for instance, in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 35, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا آدم اسكن أنت وزوجك الجنة. O Adam, dwell you and your wife in paradise. Everyone knows that Adam's wife is Hawa, Eve, so no need to mention her. In the story of Ibrahim, also in Surah Al-Baqarah, أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَّا الَّذِي حَاجَّ إِبْرَاهِيمَ فِي رَبِّهِ أَنْ آتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْمُلْكَ. Have you not considered the one who argued with Ibrahim about his Lord, merely because Allah had given him kingship? Verse 258. So it's well known that the king who did the arguing was Nimrud. And there may be other, this is ijtihad, why was he not mentioned? So there may be other reasons that others could come up with than the particular interpretation that I'm mentioning to you. So, just as that person thought he was so great in his own lifetime, it's not even worth mentioning his name for posterity. That could be another reason. Another reason for ibham, not mentioning the person, maybe to preserve the person's feelings, and I don't know if there are other examples of this. One example was only given in the book I was consulting, in Surah Al-Baqarah also. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يُعْجِبُكَ قَوْلُهُ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَيُشْهِدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا فِي قَلْبِهِ وَهُوَ أَلَدُّ الْخِصَامِ. And of mankind there is he whose conversation on the life of this world pleases you, and he calls Allah to witness as to what is in his heart, that he is the most rigid of opponents. Verse 204. And so the scholars say that was referring to a man named Al-Akhnas ibn Shurayq, I believe it's pronounced, Thaqafi, and that man later accepted Islam. So not naming him was a way of preserving his anonymity, and then he had the opportunity to change. frequently, there's no great importance to knowing the identity of that which has been left unspecified. Also in Surah Al-Baqarah, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم أو كالذي مر على قرية وهي خاوية على عروشها. Or consider, as an example, the one who passed a township which had fallen into ruin. So then he says, how can Allah give life to this after its death? So which township was that exactly? Doesn't really matter. And similarly, in Surah Al-A'raf, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم واسألهم عن القرية التي كانت حاضرة البحر إذ يعدون في السبت. And ask them about the town that was by the sea when they transgressed in the matter of the Sabbath. So the name of the town isn't important. Sometimes it's an indicator of general significance. In other words, again, going back to that issue of asbab al-nuzul, that it's not so important the particular individual about whom the verse was revealed, because it applies to everyone that the wording covers. So in Surah An-Nisa, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن يخرج من بيته مهاجرا إلى الله ورسوله ثم يدركه الموت فقد وقع أجره على الله. And whoever leaves his home as an emigrant to Allah and His Messenger, and then death overtakes him, his reward has already become incumbent upon Allah. So, verse 100 from Surah An-Nisa. And this verse was revealed about a specific person who died as he was on his way out of Mecca. And, however, anyone that leaves their home for the sake of Islam, and then they die on the way, then this verse applies to them. And then sometimes the individual is being described with attributes, not being named, but being described with attributes. And those attributes are to highlight the magnitude of the status of that individual. And every example that was mentioned in the text I was looking at referred to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. So, for example, I'll just read the English. In Surah An-Nur, and let not those who possess dignity and ease among you swear not to give to the near of kin and to the needy and to fugitives for the cause of Allah. Let them forgive and show indulgence. That's verse 22. So, this was revealed about Abu Bakr radiallahu anh when his daughter Aisha was exonerated from the gossip about her possible indiscretion. And one of the people who had been prominent in talking about it was Mistah, a relative of Abu Bakr who had emigrated in the path of Allah. So he was so angered by Mistah's behavior that he swore by Allah that he would stop spending money on him, helping to support him. And so the verse was revealed. And, so it's describing Abu Bakr as ulul fadli minkum wasa'a. And those of dignity and ease. So dignity is something that's a key characteristic of Abu Bakr. And then also, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم والذي جاء بالصدق وصدق به أولئك هم المتقون. And whoever brings the truth and believes therein, such are the dutiful, in Surah Az-Zumar, verse 33. And there are other verses besides that. إذ هما في الغار إذ يقول لصاحبه لا تحزن إن الله معنا, in Surah At-Tawbah, when it refers to the two in the cave, and when the Prophet ﷺ told his companion, don't grieve, Allah is with us. Don't be sad. So, describing him as the companion of the Prophet ﷺ, that's a real highlighting of his status. And then sometimes it's used to indicate insignificance. And an example of that in Surah Al-Kawthar, Inna shaniyaka huwa al-abtar. Indeed, it is your insulter and not you who is without posterity. So they would use the fact that the Prophet ﷺ didn't have children, didn't have male sons, and lineage is traced through the males in Arab culture. So the fact that he didn't have sons meant that he wouldn't, that his name would die out with himself. And of course, just the opposite occurred. So those who were talking that talk, their names aren't even worth mentioning, and they've been forgotten, basically. So those are some aspects of the whole issue of ibham, not coming right out and naming individuals. Okay, and then you have the whole issue of precedence in word order, when two or more things are named in the same passage. And some of the reasons for giving one word precedence over another. The first reason that was proposed is tabarruk. Now, these first couple of categories, personally, I don't really see, the difference is too subtle for me to pick up. Tabarruk means literally to seek a blessing. And so maybe in this sense it means to indicate the blessedness of something. And it is, the only example given here is Allah. In Surah Al-Imran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, شهد الله أنه لا إله إلا هو والملائكة وأولو العلم قائما بالقسط. Allah himself is a witness that there is no God but him, and the angels and the men of learning too are witnesses. He's maintaining his creation in justice. So that's verse 18. So Allah is mentioned first. But, why this isn't ta'zeem or tashrif, that's a subtlety that escapes me. And also in Surah Al-Anfal, the verse of Al-Ghanima, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَأَنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسَهُ وَلِلرَّسُولِ وَلِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. And know that whatever you take as spoils of war, indeed a fifth thereof is for Allah and for the Messenger and for those other categories that are mentioned. And of course, it makes sense that Allah would be mentioned first. And then the next category is called ta'zeem. And again, that which is given as an example is again the name of Allah. وَمَنْ يُطِعْ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولِ. In Surah Al-Nisa, that verse that we mentioned earlier from An-Nisa, verse 69, whoever obeys Allah and the Messenger. إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَمَلَائِكَتَهُ يُصَلُّونَ عَلَى النَّبِيِّ. Indeed, Allah and His angels shower blessings on the Prophet. Of course, it makes sense that Allah would be mentioned first.